What's up, guys? Welcome back to the show. Sorry we missed you last week. I had a trip and Tyler wasn't feeling too well, so we played it safe. But we're back. Today we're going to be talking chargers and batteries. But before we get into that, I got a little bit of the news as usual. Upcoming events. We got the January Jam Oval Race this Saturday, and then January Jam Off-Road Carpet Race on Sunday. That's next Sunday. And then after that, we got the Mini Nationals. I think is going to be our next biggest one. We just got a bunch of mini cars in for that race. So if you're looking to get into it, come down, grab one. It's honestly a great event to kick things off. And of course, we're doing minis every Thursday as well. So it won't be just a one-time purchase or a one-time drive. So don't worry about that. And then another thing with the minis, for my mini crawler guys out there, I just got a bunch of the, I want to say it's the Mini TF2. I could be saying that wrong, but those things look pretty cool. They come in like yellow, red, blue to compete with the Axial. And of course, I still got a bunch of Axial stuff and parts for those. So come check those out. I don't know, news-wise, I don't know if Tyler had anything going on in his world.
I've been busy not dying.
Yeah.
Got the sickness.
The ick. But
Not the good kind. But no, that was all said and done.
He's properly quarantined and properly been staying at
home.
So.
I've been drinking my daily dose of bleach. Everything's fine.
Ooh, careful.
No, it's good. Everything's nice and white inside.
Was it not before?
Not so much.
You were white through and through.
Where's Olin when you need him?
Yeah, Olin had to work, unfortunately.
So about the minis, like last year, I kind of like just out of the blue was like, you know what? That looks like fun. I'm going to get one. So I got the stock buggy and ran it for a few weeks before and then ran the Nats. Tons of fun. If anybody out there that's watching, hasn't tried the minis,
yeah,
it's 100. What are they? $150 for the brushed RTR.
If that, yeah,
something like that. Yeah. I think they
everything included
come with a battery. Like it's
ready to go.
The whole Megillah, and they're durable little cars. They're fast enough to be fun, but not so fast that they're a handful. Yeah. It's the ideal thing to just buy it, drop it down, and have fun. They're stupid, silly fun.
And if you're looking for something a little bit more than the Mini T, the LC Racing buggies are pretty sweet.
Oh,
they're not as expensive as going full bow 10 scale. Not really even close. And then they come with pretty much everything in the box, and you get to build it. So it's a little bit beyond the Mini T.
Yeah.
But a little bit pulled back from the 10 scale, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I have the video on that too. If you guys want to see it, check that thing out.
Yeah, those are cool cars.
And Thursdays for those as well. So again, not a waste if you just want to hit that one event.
Yeah, they're not one and done. If you want to run them on a Thursday night, and it's a cool laid back group.
It's fun to just drive on the track anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, today we're gonna be going over some battery charger situations, how to kind of take care of the battery, how to charge a battery. Should I spend this much on a charger, that much, LiPo bags, blah blah blah. No real particular order today. We wrote down a couple things I got here, but otherwise just gonna be bouncing ideas off each other. So I don't know. I'll let Tyler get into the batteries first. I guess we'll talk about the batteries and then get into the chargers.
Okay. You want to go over just kind of like the basics, what the numbers mean first? Start with that.
I would say let's break it down like the types of batteries first, because we're still using some of the older styles, and then why we're running LiPos now.
Okay. So this is where being the old man in the rocking chair is fun. So there's basically, we're gonna say there's two different chemistries of batteries out there. If it looks like a brick like this, it is most likely a LiPo battery or lithium polymer or whatever they want to call it. This is the newest current tech. If you see a battery that looks like 6 C size cells, which used to be the standard, it's probably a nickel metal battery. I don't think anybody's making NiCads anymore.
You'd have to do some soul searching.
But basically that's the old style stuff. It's perfectly fine if it came in a ready to run vehicle or whatever. The capacities are pretty good with nickel metal. They're 3,000, 4,000 milliamp hours, something like that.
Yeah, 3 to 5 right now generally.
And the only difference is they don't have the pop, I'll say, that a LiPo does. They can't really deliver the same power density.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Those are the two chemistries you're looking at. If it's a round with 6 of them, that's the old school stuff. Nickel metal, it's
And then
pretty easy to live with and pretty forgiving. The lithiums
just
are...
to tag onto that too, there's a couple more lithiums in there that are more specific use. There's lithium ion, which I find comes with some of the cheaper models because I think they're less volatile than lithium polymer, but they don't put out as much power.
Okay.
There's like the round, like I think they're like the 18650 cells. We're actually dealing with them today. That breaker drift truck, that UDI-RC one, that actually has a lithium ion battery. I think that is the reason for that is they can actually ship those batteries with the cars instead of the lithium polymer ones.
Oh.
I think that's due to shipping restrictions because they're less
like
volatile.
overseas in aircraft.
Right, because they're
like
in an actual cell and not these are like a fine, like a kind of a tinfoil pouch kind of deal. I know that's probably not exactly what it is, but
you're saying with LiPos.
Yeah, they're easier to puncture than lithium ion. I think that's the reason. Could be wrong there.
Yep.
But lithium ion and LiPo are fairly similar.
Cousins.
Yeah, and then there's lithium iron, which is life batteries.
LiFe, yep.
Which is actually a lower voltage. Those are primarily used for receiver packs or radio rechargeable packs.
Yeah.
They don't really put out much current, but you can run them much lower, like a lot more dead.
And it is, of course, the only lithium battery that
Yeah.
the Tamiya's are set up to run.
Oh,
run
really?
on. Yeah, their ESCs have
I didn't even
I've
never run a
LiFe
lithium.
capable.
I've never run a life battery in the car before.
Yeah,
Because they're
that's why I say only Tamiya.
So I think they're like 6.6 volts instead of 7.4.
Yeah, the nominal voltage
So
is
it's
less.
a little weird. I've only ever used them in radios before. So.
Yeah.
But just to throw those two out there, we're going to be focusing on lithium polymer today because that's 95% of the market right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Tyler was saying, I just wanted to throw those two in there.
Yeah, I forgot about those.
Yeah, just so.
Because they, like you said, they kind of don't appear that often.
Yeah, they don't. You're not really using them much. But yeah, I guess we can go over kind of what the label means on the battery. I know we touched on that a little bit before in our electronics podcast, but it was kind of at the end. It was brief. So we're going to bring it up again here, just for anybody that missed that. So we'll go over that real quick. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So, lithium batteries, lithium polymer batteries, or LiPos, you'll hear the battery referred to as having a certain number of cells. It may be a 1, and the terminology will be 1S, 2S, 3S, etc., etc. One cell is 3.7 volts nominal. So when it's like, call it half charged.
The middle. That's the nominal.
Storage charged. So if you have a 1 cell, it's going to be a 3.7 volt pack. If it's a 2 cell, which is what all the race cars most of us are running, it's going to be 7.4. This guy, which I was surprised when I picked this up, this is a 3 cell, but it's in the same
the
packaging,
dimensions
same dimensions as a 2, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we do that.
So you can run this in a 10th scale vehicle very easily. This is one of the new wave packs.
Yeah.
But basically, the number of cells tells you how much voltage the battery is going to put out.
Every time a cell is added, 3.7 volts is added to the overall voltage. So that's why every time a cell goes up, the overall voltage goes up. 2 cell, 3 cell, 4 cell, blah, blah, blah. Just add 3.7 volts.
Yep, it's just another little...
They're just tagging another cell in there and wired in. That's all it is.
Right. So, and that kind of just really briefly, if you were to open up one of these, which do not recommend, but you'll sooner or later, if you run LiPo batteries, you'll end up getting
I haven't opened one.
You'll get a look inside. They kind of look like little tinfoil bags, each cell. So you're going to end up with, inside this guy, 3 little tinfoil-looking pouches. This is a 2 cell shorty, they call these, because it is short. So inside this would be 2 little tinfoil cells or pouches. And like we said, that's basically the amount of voltage that the battery puts out. If you have more cells, it's more voltage, it's more power.
Yeah, pretty much as simple as it gets. The bigger batteries just have bigger cells. Smaller batteries have smaller cells. That's literally the milliamp and stuff like that.
Right. So so that ties into the next thing, which is the milliamp hour rating. If you break down that term, milliamp is 1 milliamp is 0.001 amps. So it's basically an indication of how much current can the battery give you for an hour.
Right.
So this guy is a 5200 mAh, milliamp hour. So it can give you 5200 milliamps of current for 1 hour continuous. Or if you want to make it into a more easy to use number, because we usually don't talk milliamps, we talk amps.
Right.
This could give you 5.2 amps of power for 1 hour. And you can play with the math. You know, it can give you 10.4 for 30 minutes,
A bunch of math and science involved in figuring out those.
or whatever. But we're not going to go that deep. So bottom line is again, the higher the number, the more capacity. So your milliamp hour is basically how big of a gas tank do you have. That's the easiest way I could
That's
illustrate
what I tell people all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the size of the gas tank. The bigger the fuel tank, the more fuel you can fit in it, the longer you can drive your car. Basically what it boils down to.
Yep.
And you should pick an appropriate size battery for the car that you are driving. You don't want to run a 200 milliamp battery in a 10 scale car, and because it'll suck out too much of the battery all at once and damage the battery. So make sure you pick an appropriately sized appropriately sized battery for the car you are driving. Don't try to cram a small battery in a big car. I guess you can cram a big battery in a small car. That's not going to hurt anything except the car performance.
Right. So
voltage-wise, that would be bad. I'm talking milliamp-wise.
right. The only spot where having too much capacity in your battery can bite you is if your runtime becomes so long.
Fair point.
Right. And say your car doesn't have a fan on the ESC or a fan on multiple fans on the motor, and you go out and you rip on this thing for 30 minutes. Now your motor is Chernobyl hot and stuff's not happy. So that's kind of the only way you can.
Yeah, sometimes you're almost better getting, say, two 5,000 milliamp batteries and letting the car have a break in between instead of getting one 10,000 milliamp battery and just completely running it dry. And like Ty said, the motor's just you're gonna cook it. So it's not always the best thing to have a huge battery. So I do correct myself. Tyler did get me on that one. Yeah, so it isn't. But just appropriate battery for appropriate car. It's really not too hard to do these days.
And it's so different than the way it used to be with the older battery chemistries. Back when I ran oval, the guys in the modified class had to time their motors and gear their cars based on the track so they could make a full 4-minute race. Not 5, but 4 minutes.
Yeah, now we run 6, 7, no problem.
Right,
because think about it.
So this battery right here, this shorty, which is basically industry standard, you can pick this up from any manufacturer, is triple, if not more than triple, the capacity of the batteries that I started racing with years ago. Right. So I mean, it's and that's why the cars are so much faster now, because you have such a big gas tank.
Yeah.
You have you can feed a big block instead of a small block for the entire race.
You mentioned the racing there. I do get this question often, sometimes from people getting back into the hobby. You don't really have to cycle lithium batteries. I get a lot of people coming back into. Should I run this first? Should I charge this? Should I cycle it? You don't really have to cycle lithium batteries. Is it good and bad? It's probably good to discharge it to the voltage and then recharge it.
Right.
It's not bad for it, but it's also, you can run it half charge and it's not going to hurt anything. Usually, like back when they were running the nickel metals and NiCads and stuff, if you just continuously ran the half charge battery, it would build up a memory and not want to fully charge. So you would cycle them.
There were a bunch of bizarre by today's standards, things that people did to get the most out of their packs.
When they attach them to the light bulb.
Yep, guys would have banks of light bulbs, little, turn signal size light bulbs like from a car, and they would, at the end of a run, they'd pull the battery out, they'd hook it up to the light bulbs, they would absolutely dead short the battery to the point where it had no life in it. Then they would run a wire across the positive and negative tabs to keep it, because it would recover on its own a little bit, to keep it dead shorted.
Yeah.
While they, so Friday night, you put everything in the bag, dead short all through the week, and then you take it back out, you take the wire off the battery, and you recharge it for the next week's race.
Literally the exact opposite of lithium batteries.
Yeah, 100% the thing that will cause a LiPo
do not do that with
let
LiPo.
The smoke out.
And don't do it with a charged nickel metal either. Don't cross positive and negative.
Yeah.
Don't do that at all.
Learn from Ghostbusters, kids. Don't cross the streams.
Do not cross the streams.
But like even back then, Chris was doing, when Chris started New Wave.
Yeah.
He was matching, like people used to have these huge machines where they would run, dozens of individual cells.
We still have them. Essentially paperweights now.
To basically break down the internal resistance of the battery and increase the voltage and do it was a ton of tinkering and fussing.
It's a lot of super expensive equipment too.
Yeah, and that's why back then you were paying $60 to $80 for a race pack. And today you're spending $50 for a race pack that is, or whatever they cost.
You can spend $100 easy on it.
If you're buying like the Team Trinity super duper white carbon.
But that's off the shelf battery, really.
It is.
It's not matched or balanced or blah.
Right. It doesn't have all the voodoo in it.
It's mostly marketing at that point, but you're still spending $80 on a decent LiPo battery, but it's just. I'll take that one. Nobody put a lot of work into it.
And you charge it, and you run it, and you storage it.
That was $80. What, 25?
Well, that's the thing,
years
right?
ago.
It was $60 to $80 25 years ago.
Right.
So now do the math, and that was a $120 battery.
More than 25. At least 30, 35 now.
So
it's 2022 now.
Anyway, lithium's good stuff. Power density is way higher, and this is where. So, all right. Have you had people ask you, are lithium batteries faster?
I mean...
Or some version of that question, right?
Or because the voltage is a little bit lower, is it the same speed?
Right. Where lithium batteries are a big deal, one is the size of the gas tank. They can just hold more potential energy. But two is their ability to send that energy back out quickly. So if we use the gas tank illustration, the old style batteries, your fuel line would be this little tiny fuel line that can only support so much power.
Sure.
The lithiums, it's like drinking your fuel through a hose this big. You can get so much more power out of a lithium battery, and that's getting to basically what does the C rating mean. The C rating it's kind of a dimensionless term. But all you need to know is the higher the number, the more current the battery can instantaneously deliver, the more amps. So if you have some super high horsepower car, you want a higher C rating in your battery so that it can give that motor and that ESC the power that it's demanding.
It's like it's your fuel pump.
Yeah, that's a good illustration. So it's like, trying to drink through a tiny straw versus a really big one or whatever. It uncorks the system.
Yeah, C rating is one of those things where it's half true and half marketing in my mind.
100%, because there is no industry standard.
Right. So C rating is now anybody can essentially print a sticker and put C rating on a battery. You can make it 5,000 million C, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now, as far as I am concerned, there's low grade, mid grade, and high grade batteries. I think when they make them in the factory, they probably test them, and then this is 20C, 50C, 100C.
Yep.
More or less, they test. I'm assuming they load test the cells somehow, and they give you some kind of. Now I'm just talking like this. I've never been to a factory in China to say this, but this is just my theory about it. So take it as you will. But there is some difference between, I would say there's a difference between a 20C battery and a 100C battery.
Oh, absolutely.
There is a difference, don't get me wrong. But there is a certain point of diminishing return depending on what you're using the battery for. So if you're running your Traxxas slash two-wheel drive, just a regular brush truck, you can run a probably 30 to 50 C2 cell battery all day, no problem. And if you put a 150C LiPo in it, still no problem. Now you're going to pay a premium for that 150C battery where a 50C battery would have done the job just fine.
Right. Just because the battery can give you more energy doesn't mean that the rest of the vehicle has to be matched to it.
Right.
If the rest of the vehicle is not trying to pull that power, you have this super duper battery that's really not doing anything for you. It's not hurting you.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
But it's not going to make it faster.
That would be a situation where you could probably save a couple bucks and still get the same result. Now, I'm not going to knock you for buying the more expensive, better battery. That's never a problem. That's fine.
You can always grow into it.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. But I see it all the time. People will show me, this, 50C. I'll show them a 50C battery whatever for $50 or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, but I saw this one online. It's 150C for $150." I'm like, "Well, technically that'll work, but you're gonna spend another $100 on a battery that's
not
gonna give you the same result."
Right.
But on the other hand, I get guys that come in with, this big 8th scale heavy truck, and they got 220C 2 cells in it. And then they're wondering why their batteries are dumping or the car is dying quickly. I'm like, well, you didn't spend enough on your batteries. You want the 100C batteries because your car is asking for more power than those batteries are rated to deliver.
And early on, like when I was new to lithium batteries, I had packs that I'm going to say I caused to puff.
Yeah.
Because they were 40, it was a 40C 2 cell stick pack, just like this. And I put it in a 10th scale low C 4-wheel short course truck. And it was running like it was running a pretty decent sized brushless system, and it's a big heavy truck. And I had 2 packs and they both puffed on the same day. And I had my LiPo cutoff was correct. I had everything set right.
Yeah, it's really no
and it was because
fault of your own.
That car was trying to pull more than the battery could deliver, and it pissed off the battery.
Yeah, it's like, trying to put a lawnmower battery to try to start your truck.
Right.
It might do it a few times, but it's not made for it.
Right.
But so just kind of figure out what you're running with, and just kind of ask questions about what battery you should run and what the company. I mean, a lot of the companies will tell you what battery they recommend for. I know Traxxas, Arma, all the major brands kind of have.
They will, huh?
They kind of have their own. I mean, they're going to market
they're going to tell you
their
to buy
own
their battery.
Their battery,
yeah.
Which at the end of the day is honestly not a horrible choice if you're just looking to just drive something and have fun with it. Because if something does go wrong, a lot of these companies will back up their product if you're using their battery. Yep. Which is a whole other thing. Like recently, just had a problem with Traxxas. Really nobody's fault, but I did have a speed control burn up in a Traxxas car, and they were running all full Traxxas equipment. So I phoned up Traxxas and told them everything, and they helped me out. They sent me all new stuff, and everybody was happy. Well,
right, because
Traxxas probably wasn't. But
because the owner followed their recipe.
Right.
And Traxxas and a lot of these OEMs will say, okay, we know that with this motor in this vehicle, with this speedo, it wants this for a battery. Right. And when you start deviating from it and breaking stuff is when they may come back to you and say, well...
Yeah, so if you're just getting in the game, getting a complete setup, battery charger with the truck is not a horrible choice. Now, I will concede that they're probably not the best batteries for the price. You are paying for some of the marketing. Okay, I agree. There are better batteries, but you're losing that warranty, I'm gonna call it.
The implied warranty.
Yeah, I'll use that lightly because I don't know what their deal is. But they did warranty everything for what it's worth, and they helped me out. So that's a whole another route. But I forgot where we were going to that now.
Well, I mean, so basically at this point, it's been...
Yeah.
What do the numbers in the batteries mean? I think we've covered that adequately.
Yep.
And just to put a bow on it, like that whole explanation of what Tyler just gave you is why it's important. And I feel like we say this in every podcast, why it's important to know what you're running in.
Yeah.
Know what you're doing with something, know what the rest of your power combination looks like, the motor, the ESC, etc., and make sure stuff is matched. And if you don't know how to match it, either link up with the forums, the community, or come in here and talk to these guys because they have seen your combination guaranteed at some point.
Or just don't get mad when you got to spend money.
Also, yes.
Which is a fine route too. I'm all about experimenting. Just don't get mad when things break.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of things. So yeah, lithium batteries are definitely the way to go these days, and we kind of broke down all that stuff, and then I did want to touch on the voltage a little more. We did talk about the voltage being nominal. These batteries do charge past what they're rated for on the label. Like the 2 cell is 7.4 volts, but it actually peaks out at 8.4. So I get that question a lot on the phone. Oh, my battery's charging to 8.4. Is it supposed to stop at 7.4? No.
There was somebody here a month ago, and so 2-wheel drive buggy. I was trying to help him out.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And he's like, "Man, my car feels so slow." And I'm looking at what he had for a motor, for all the stuff, Yeah, it looks fine. He's got the right stuff in the car. The
Right.
car shouldn't, and it was. The car was kind of a dog. So we went back and forth. His slipper clutch was set too loose. We fixed that. The car had a little more punch, but it was still kind of slow. Yada, yada, yada. I said to him, I go, just on a lark, I said, run my battery. So he threw my battery in the car. He went and he ran 2 laps, and he was like, this thing's a rocket ship. He goes, what kind of battery is this? Is this a 3-cell? Turned out he had been charging the battery. I think he got his wires crossed, pun. And he was only charging it to the storage
It's a good segue to our next segment.
value. So he was only charging the battery to nominal. And that's basically half full. So, he would run it down to LiPo cutoff, maybe 7 volts for the pack.
Yeah.
And then he would only charge it back up half an amp. So that was his whole problem, was the car had no power because he was 1 volt under a full charge when he had a full charge.
Right.
So, the nominal voltage thing is important to keep in mind. And like I always go back to full-size vehicles. The battery in most passenger cars is 12 volts. If you put, a checker across it, it's 12 volts. But when the car is running and the system is charging, it's 14.4 or whatever. So it's the same deal. These
Right.
batteries are going to be higher than nominal when you go out to make your run. And, if you're racing, you're allowed a little bit of wiggle room there too. But generally,
Yeah.
it's a 2-cell is going to be 8.4 when you go out.
Right. And most chargers are preset to charge a 2-cell to 8.4, which is 4.2 volts per cell. So that's across the board, again, with the nominal voltage, but a full charge will be 4.2 volts per cell, so 2-cell, 3-cell, 4-cell, just keep
Just do the math.
adding them together. And most chargers, which is what we're going to talk about next, will already preset that for you. So they usually just have you set a cell count, and then he'll take care of the voltage. So
Yeah, as
don't
long
have
as
to
you
worry about it too much.
pick the right program.
But I get a lot of phone calls when the charger's reading out, it's going to 8 volts and 8.4, and what's happening? It's
Should
charging.
I bring this out in the driveway before?
It's charging. But that is another good example there too, because when charging, so we can talk about, I guess, LiPo safety a little bit too for the
Yeah,
beginning.
that's a good subject.
We might as well, since we're kind of talking about cell voltage and stuff.
Yep.
LiPos do get a bad rep, and honestly, I have seen my fair share of them go up. But, big but there. The only time I see them go up is when they're illy taken care of or
Yes.
improperly charged. I have yet to just have one sitting on my bench just explode.
Yep.
Now there might be somebody out there saying, I had one sitting there and it blew up in the corner and wasn't doing anything. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying in all the batteries in the years I've been doing it, I have yet to see it.
And I would say the same.
So I'll run you through, say, 2 scenarios. Might be 3. We'll start with the first one. The first one that I see the most of is the user has ran the battery in the car, left the battery plugged into the car, and then put the car away for a while, and then brought the car back out. Battery's completely flat. Reason being, one, you ran the car most likely to voltage cutoff, so it's now sitting at a dead state. Still rechargeable, but dead. But when you leave it plugged into the car, all the speed controls actually got little capacitors and stuff in them that want a constant charge. So it's actually just taking a little bit of voltage out of the battery.
It's sitting there.
And you
sipping
sit
on
there
it
for weeks,
for hours,
weeks
yeah.
and months. Eventually, it just sucks everything out of the battery, and the battery's now completely flat. Now, depending on the usage of the battery and how old the battery is, and how quickly you catch it, you can jump start it, which is a bit of a risky business. So I don't recommend this to everybody or the faint of heart. I do it here at the shop, but I've done it hundreds of times. That's where this little guy comes in
Under
handy.
close supervision, I'm sure.
Yes. That's where these little guys come in handy. These are cell checkers. I did a full video on this Spectrum one. Check that out on the channel. That's where these guys come in handy because these, you can read the individual cell voltage of the battery aside from having it plugged into the charger, because sometimes some chargers won't even let you read the cell voltage if it's too low. So cell checkers, awesome tool to have. Also just
Yeah, they are.
quick and easy just to test the battery to see if it's charged without having to hook everything up.
Yep.
And this one does a few other cool things like servo testing and whatnot, but like I said, whole video on that guy. So basically, you have to jump start the battery, which is pushing voltage to it, unbalanced, to try to get the cell voltage to come back up to a point where
the charger is
the
happy
safety and the charger
is willing to then
is willing to do it. But where things get dangerous is if one cell is like, nah, I'm done, I'm not coming back. It's still going to be pushing voltage, but one cell will be 0 and the other one's going to be taking double the voltage.
Which is when things get exciting.
Because now, instead of taking, I'll say the 4 volts, it's now taking 8 volts, which is double what the cell was designed to charge. And
right.
Boom, it goes up. And it's not pretty when they go up. They burn hot, fast, and they put off this nasty smoke.
Yep.
But like I said, that was an unmonitored charge from a dead battery that was illy taken care of, and it's not good.
Yeah. The only bad battery that I've seen so far in the last few years, that's exactly what happened. It was left in the car,
Yeah.
plugged in, so a couple general statements here. One, don't store your batteries in your cars. If something goes wrong, you're not just losing your battery, you're losing the entire vehicle.
Correct. Don't charge it in the car.
Don't charge it in the car. 2, don't overcharge, don't over-discharge. And generally speaking, like when I go, so we have a LiPo sack? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I grabbed Olin's there. Shout out to Olin.
So lots of companies make these little fire-resistant
Yeah, they're definitely
bags.
not proof. I'll be honest with you.
And
they help.
They're basically intended as containment. When you buy a battery, most manufacturers will say, don't charge indoors or something insane like that. These batteries are getting charged indoors. They're getting charged in basements. They're getting charged in hobby shops, etc.
Right.
But having a bag like this gives you that little bit of cushion where if something does happen for whatever reason, it's in a fire retardant or fire resistant material where you have time, you can unplug it and run for the dumpster, the backyard, whatever.
And those bags are rated for a certain size battery as well. You cram a 8,000 milliamp 6S battery in there, and
it'll probably burn through the bag.
Oh, it will.
Right.
I've seen it. But if you got a small battery in there, so those have ratings too, so check those out. But they definitely help. The only thing I've seen that's like 100%, like, don't worry about it,
Metal
old
case
school
or something.
ammo can.
Yeah, sure.
They can take the heat.
Well,
I've seen
if they can take ammunition going off or whatever the
I've
case
seen
may
guys
be.
drill a hole in the side of it and then charge them on in there if you're really worried about it. I also don't charge it unattended. You know what I mean? Don't plug that baby in and then just leave the house and up against.
God, never leave the house.
Yeah, charging it on a chair in the middle of your hardwood floor.
Even next to the fireplace.
Yeah.
Like when I get home, I usually, even though I have like a storage bag that I keep the packs in, I take it out of my gear bag and I place it in the middle of the concrete floor of the basement.
Yeah.
So even if something does happen, it's not within reach of anything flammable or whatever.
Yeah.
Because you probably don't want to put
That's what I usually tell people. If they're having you got a battery and you're like, I don't know about this battery. I mean, the charger's still accepting it, but I was like, take your charger, put it in the middle of a concrete floor, walkway, something that's not gonna burn. Right. Because while they do burn and they do go up fast, they don't really. I don't know. It's not really like a broad flame. As long as you got like a few foot radius on a pad. Like we charge ours on a countertop. Yep. And we've had a few go up on it, and it hasn't really caught anything else.
Or if you have like a tiles or a block of aluminum or something that can absorb some of the.
But now that we got all the fear out of the way, these are really, I don't know, small scenarios, like
extremely unlikely.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that have to add up for it to be that dangerous, and you have to kind of just, if the battery's starting to puff up, the case is breaking,
if something smells off,
just don't charge it. And if you're having it, just bring it to a hobby shop, or honestly just cut your losses and throw it away. Because I've had some guys, the battery is like, I'm like, I don't know, I probably wouldn't run it, but I'm gonna give it back to you, and you can decide for yourself. And then they use it for a while, and then for some reason at this point you were able to charge it, but now it's in your car. I see this a lot for 8-scale racing because they're so demanding on the battery. We had 2 this year, 2 4-cells go up in 8-scale buggies, and like Tyler said, now the battery is in your car, strapped in with the body covering it. It tends to melt just about everything around it. Your body's toast, the battery tray. Hopefully it didn't catch your speed control at the same time. Melt all the wires together because they burn hot.
Yeah.
So if you got a sketchy battery, I probably wouldn't take the chances with it. But if you're relatively nice to your battery, charge it, don't kill it, over discharge it, leave it in a relatively warm or cool environment.
Yeah, don't let them freeze.
Yeah.
Don't let them get overly hot.
You'll be fine.
Just
honestly.
I mean, if you treat your batteries like you would treat a piece of equipment that you care about,
Yeah.
you won't
same.
have issues.
And most of these chargers are pretty smart nowadays. They don't really let you charge it wrong. I'm not going to say they won't, because you definitely can do some bypassing in there.
Yeah, but at that point, you're going out of your way to ask for it.
Yeah. So for the most part, the chargers are pretty good. And I have seen once or twice in my about 10-year stint here where the battery was charging and balancing and something happened. So I'm not saying it can't happen. It definitely can. Be safe with them. But it is a superior technology. It makes the cars run the best. So you gotta kind of take the good with the bad there.
So, I don't know how many podcasts ago it was, but we brought in our personal vehicles,
Yes.
right? And I had my little yellow Blackfoot.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that truck, I threw a lithium in it just to see if I could tell a difference, because it's just a 27-turn brushed stock motor.
Yeah.
And the truck was noticeably faster with the lithium battery. It was only like a 50C battery compared to the regular stick, the 6-cell nickel metals that I used to run.
You actually just brought something
So
else
even
up.
in a mild vehicle, going from non-lithium to lithium,
Yeah.
they'll pep them up.
And to circle back after our little fear-mongering LiPo thing there.
You can crawl out from under your tables now.
Another good thing about the lithium batteries that Tyler just jogged my memory of running an old car is actually the curve at which rate they die. So nickel metal batteries will start out, you're having an awesome time, wicked fast, and then you start doing one of these pretty hard, and then your car stops moving. Lithium batteries they do start a little high, and then they do have a little bit of drop off, but they stay pretty level.
Yeah.
Pretty level, and then nothing. Your car completely dies because your speed control hits voltage cutoff.
Right.
So you get a more consistent run out of a lithium battery.
Yeah, very
as
true.
opposed to a nickel metal
The fade is way less.
way less fade and more power.
Yep.
That's honestly the biggest reason why they become the norm, because when we're racing and your battery voltage stays, or your battery power stays so consistent throughout the whole race, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
'Cause
That's
you can
why
make all the jumps the whole time, and
Yep.
you can run a longer race now.
shy of lithium, like worldwide lithium running out, you'll never see a backward step in battery technology.
Oh yeah, with everything.
This stuff,
coming, electric cars and the whole show.
It's lighter, it's more.
It's only going to get better.
Yeah.
Really. But yeah, so that's kind of the whole spiel about batteries, I think.
Yeah,
we
that
can
was
definitely.
a rant.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think we just went on for about 40 minutes about batteries. We could probably keep going too, honestly. We didn't even really talk about bullets and hardwire batteries.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of that sort of. It's a little bit
mostly
self-explanatory, but
I do want to talk about the connector real quick, though.
okay. So basically, you have two styles. You're either going to get a battery with a flying lead
Right.
and a connector, or most race packs are going to just have a hole.
It's just straight bullets that'll go into it. It's like this guy here. Bullet leads plug right in.
There's the bullet.
That is a reducer to run two separate size bullets, 4 and 5 millimeter. There's a different size hole depending on whatever you have wired on your car.
Yeah.
The standard is becoming 5 millimeter at this
The,
point.
the reason the bullet connectors are more prevalent with the race cars is from a wiring and packaging standpoint. It's a little bit tidier. You don't have this big dongle flopping around in the car and then one coming off the ESC.
a
But
little bit more for direct connection, and it's a little cleaner. The bodies sit really low in the car,
Yeah.
so it's just. And then we got these cool charge leads that plug right into the bullet connectors batteries. So it's a little easy use and style points, I guess.
But now you want to talk connectors.
But I want to talk connectors,
which
because
I'm totally behind on. To me, this is still cutting edge, and I would probably get flamed for that.
definitely I'm gonna flame it for it.
It's the Dean's connector. It's
Dean's connector
world class.
is a decent plug. I'm not gonna lie, and they just came out with their high temp ones, which seem to be fine. But since lithium batteries have come out and brushless motors and this huge demand to go faster and faster and faster,
Current goes up.
the Dean's plug and the Tamiya plug
The Tamiya plugs were bad even 20 years ago.
Tamiya plugs, don't even mess with Tamiya plugs. You get a little white plug on anything, you don't even bother with it. Gone. We don't. It doesn't really come on anything anymore than except
Tamiya stuff.
They just can't seem to let that one go.
Yeah.
So you do need to find an appropriate connector for the car that you're using. You can never go too big on the connector, other than actually fitting inside the car. Yeah. So like this connector here is the IC5 plug. This is one that the Spectrum's been using. Awesome plug. But you can see the size difference on the. I'll try to zoom in for you guys. See the size difference on connectors there. You definitely like this. If you run the Dean's connector, we're having trouble like A scale a few years ago because we were still kind of in the transition phase for connectors. Even running the 4-cell, you're coming up on at the 5-minute mark, it would melt off the negative on the connector because it's drawing too much. The connector is overheating. I've seen Dean's actually the tabs just melt into the connector because they're so hot.
Well, and that's where you can end up with issues because dead shorting a LiPo is one of the best ways to piss it off.
And then you can blow up your battery because the leads have melted so much to the point where they touch, and then you lose your car, battery, and.
So that's why most of these newer.
So yeah, a lot of these
have
plugs,
such big plugs inside.
So this one I think is 5mm bullets.
Yeah.
The XT90 is a great one, the IC5. That can be used from 10 scale to 8 scale, a little bit in the 6 scale range. If you're gonna go bigger, I'd say anything 6S, anything up to 6S, the IC5s are good. And if you're gonna go more than 6, I usually go with the QS8 connectors. Those are the big black ones that have 8mm bullets in them.
Wow.
Those are great, and a lot of guys are using those for drag racing too because the amp draw for drag racing is getting insane. Right. They're just drawing so much power.
And so the amp draw is what generates heat.
Yeah.
And is what basically, if you have a connector that's too small,
you want the least amount of resistance here.
It's going to be right. It's going to be more resistance, which means more heat, which means melty.
When you get the battery, get the appropriate size connector on it because you can buy like this 50C 5000 batteries coming with a Dean's plug. And if you're running this in your 10 scale 2-wheel drive truck or something like that, I'll use a Slash again. The Dean's will probably be fine. But if you're going to pair up 2 of these and run it in your Creighton on 6S, you're going to probably want to switch them to the IC5. And all these plugs can be clipped and soldered and stuff like that.
Yep.
I would say any competent hobby shop will be able to change connectors to just about any. I know I can put any connector on just about anything.
Probably in your sleep at this point.
Yeah, it's really not a big deal. And honestly, a good thing to get into soldering and learn how to do that.
That actually would be that'd be a good subject to cover maybe on a brief.
I think I've done a video on soldering these guys if anybody's wondering the IC5s. I do love that connector. But yeah, connectors is another big thing because Tyler said if you do end up melting a connector and these tabs, the positive negative touch on the battery,
it's party time.
Yeah, you're gonna have a light show. So another good thing to keep a lookout for is connectors.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So segueing off connectors, once you figure out what battery and connector you're gonna be running, you're gonna figure out how to charge this puppy, which is a whole nother game. So basically, when it comes down to chargers, the more you spend, the faster it gets done, and the more options you have. Basically, what it boils down to. So with that being said, I briefly touched on the Traxxas and the Spectrum. So Arma is owned by Horizon, which does Spectrum and Arma. So if you're buying an Arma product, they sell what I call, Traxxas calls them completer packs. I think Spectrum calls them power stages. I'm just going to call them all completers. This is easier. Basically, they sell you a charger and a battery, or maybe 2, to match the vehicle that you're buying. So because of shipping restrictions, they cannot ship a lithium polymer battery with their car. So that's why a lot of days now you see it's a ready-to-run car, but battery and charger not included. Okay? So they used to be able to ship nickel metals with cars, no problem, because they're not volatile, doesn't matter. The exact reason why they can't ship them, not 100% sure. Maybe it's because if they get punctured, they'll explode and burn the whole box of boxes down. I don't know.
I've dealt with this with pertaining to like my actual real job, my work. It's the mode of transportation. I think I'm going to say I think. So if someone out there is an expert, you can blow me up in the comments. I think it's the method of transportation being used So if you're flying the freight, you can't have certain things. Whereas if you're driving it, like putting it in a tractor trailer, you can. So that's why like these would go, theoretically, would go ground.
We still get them obviously shipped to us ground, but they come in their own box. And they're marked lithium batteries, flammable.
Maybe when they ship them, they put it in a
special
special
spot. I don't know if they have to pay
spot.
a certain hazmat charge on them and stuff like that, because they always come separate. So that's the reason, not to get into logistics of shipping batteries.
Oh, come on, that's fascinating.
Yeah, but do keep that in mind if you do have to ship them, by the way. But that's why these companies sell completer packs. Most of the time it's on the box somewhere, because obviously they're marketing their stuff to you.
They want to tell you what to go buy.
I don't know if I have.
But that's cool though, because then that means that
so
the battery is matched to the charger and the connectors match. So it's much less of a guessing game.
So this is the Spectrum Power Stage, which I did talk about in my video talking about the BLX 3S lineup. So if you're interested, you can take a little more. But something like this, Traxxas has the same deal, and Spectrum, they're the two biggest ones right now. But basically it's giving you a 3S battery, the appropriate connectors, and a basic charger. And you buy the Typhon 3S buggy to go with it. Between this and the car, you now have everything.
That's awesome.
So it does make it super easy. Now with this being said, and the Traxxas one being said, it's not the fastest charger and probably not the best battery you can get.
It's convenient.
It gets the job done, everything works, and the instructions all match, and it's probably the easiest way to get into it, which is why, for the most part, new people, I try to push this product. It's easier for everybody at the end of the day. But with that being said, there is a whole slew of aftermarket chargers, which can do the same job, generally faster, but because they're universal, you're getting some more options, in which case you kind of have to figure out how to use the charger a little bit, because it's going to require you to set up the charger for this battery, while those chargers are basically you're plugging it in and it's reading what the battery is, and it just kind of does its job because it was made to charge that battery.
Right. Which
is cool. If you want to stay in that ecosystem, I got guys that just run Traxxas. They just buy Traxxas stuff. They just buy Traxxas chargers, and that's all they want out of it.
Right.
Which is fun.
Well, because again, you take it out of the box, you plug it in the wall, or you plug it into whatever, you hook everything up and you hit go. And you're done.
They just want simple. They don't care if it takes an extra 20 minutes or a half hour. I'm just going to charge it. I know it's working. I'm going to come back and use it.
Right.
I don't knock anybody for that. Whatever makes you happy. But some guys are, I want to charge these batteries as fast as I can, and I want to get two 8,000 milliamp 4 cells. I want to charge them in 14 seconds and be back out there again. Let's do it. Right on. I can help you out.
Yep.
So, with that being said, I got a whole little lineup here. We'll talk a little bit about chargers here. I got from $30 to $300 here. So, like I said before, you're basically paying for the types or the amount of cells a battery it can charge, and then how fast it can do it. So, chargers are rated mostly in amperage. So, amperage is 1 amp to 40 amps. 1 being slowest, 40 being fastest, and then everything in between. Obviously, that's just a little scale. So more amps equals faster charge, but not every battery can take so many amps. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, that gets back to battery life.
That gets back to a little bit about the batteries, which I'm not glazing over. We're gonna circle back to that one because that's a big deal. So it starts out, we got a simple $30 charger. Plugs into the wall. This will do 2 to 4S batteries, which is the general size battery for most cars. It's just got a little switch on there, 1 to 3 amps, a little push button start. It's about as easy as it gets. For $30, it'll do your 5,000 battery. It'll probably take about an hour to charge this battery, but it'll do it and do just fine.
So that's basically a step up from maybe the USB charger that might come with the car or something like that.
Like you just picked up your Mini T, and that comes with an 800 milliamp battery, and you don't want to use the crappy USB charger it comes with,
which will take forever.
Yeah, and they're very unreliable. And you're like, I just want to charge it a little faster. All right, $30, it'll do the job.
Yep.
And it'll basically charge that battery as fast as it safely can be charged, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just goes up the scale here. $30 to your $60 range. Usually upgrade you to some kind of digital screen with buttons on it, and then now this will do, I think,
10 amps.
Yeah, 10 amps, 1 to 6 cell. So now you get a little extra. Oh, usually all the specs are written on the back there too. Forgot to mention that.
I have that one. I love that thing.
Yeah, so it's a decent little charger, but it does up to 10 amps. So you've upgraded from 3 amps to 10 amps.
And does it have? Let me see the front of it. Yeah. So it even has a 2 amp 5 volt. Out.
Yeah.
You can plug a USB charger into that as well. So you can charge your phone off of it or whatever.
And it also has a DC option too. It's an AC/DC, so you can hook this up with a car battery in the field or something like that.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point.
Gives you a little more.
Not all chargers are going to plug into the wall. Some of them may require a separate power supply.
Most of the boxes will say AC or AC/DC. A lot of them are AC/DC at this point, but not all of them. So yeah, you spend a little more, you get an upgraded screen, you get a little more options, it'll read out a little more info, faster. It'll read out some information about the battery, charge a little faster, a few different battery types. Then it moves into essentially what is 2 of them slammed together for a dual charger. So it'll do the same things, but now you can charge 2 at a time, which is where things get beneficial.
Yeah.
If you're going to run in your 8 scale class where you're going to be running 2 3 cells in series, so you want to charge both of them at the same time, which is what the Traxxas and the Spectrum Power Stage bundles they have for those as well. They sell you 2 batteries with a dual charger, which is what I grabbed here. This is the older model. They actually just started updating them with the smart chargers, but it gives you ports so you can do both your batteries at a time, and it's set up to charge those batteries,
which is nice.
The newest Spectrum one, which I do have set up down back, I should have grabbed it, is actually pretty cool because they got the smart technology. Traxxas also does the same, relatively the same thing. You just plug in the battery, and it just knows what battery it is, and it starts.
So, what about the I'm going to ask the question that maybe people are wondering. What about the battery does it need to know?
So, when you're initially setting up a charger, actually, let's run through the rest of the chargers, and then I'm going to do that one. All right, so I'm going to run through, and then I'm going to circle back to that. How to set up the charger. Yeah. So basically, we got the dual charger, and then it moves up to what I consider the higher end of AC chargers. Basically, you can plug it into a wall outlet. Yep. And if that doesn't make sense, it'll make sense in a minute. So this is the higher end of plug-in wall outlet chargers. This is the 150. This will do 12 amps on one side, 20 on the other, 1 to 6 cell. Basically, any type of battery that you really need to use. We have 2 of these set up in the shop that we use to charge, various batteries, customers, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's as good as it gets, more or less, for just an AC plug into the wall charger. Now, when I said AC, that's because I was going to talk about this guy next. This is an iCharger, which is DC only. Okay. So by that I mean it needs a power supply.
Right.
The reason being, you can only draw so much amps off of AC current before it has to be converted to DC, where this charger will go up to actually a 40 amp charge rate. So you cannot pull 40 amp charge rate off of an AC, whatever, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Plug in the wall charger.
Yeah, AC current without a power supply. Now, there's some chargers that'll charge higher amps than this one, but they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger because they're just building in the power supply into the back end of the charger.
Right.
The fastest one I've seen that's AC, I think, is the ProTech one. That'll do 25 amps per side, but it's also twice the size of this. So they basically have just slammed a power supply on the back side of it, and made it a plug into the wall. This is the iCharger. This is probably the most popular one that we use for racing. They got a few different models. This just happened to be the one that we use over here. This will do 2 at a time, 40 amps a side, up to a 6 cell. It's got information to read resistance, IRs, temperature. You can 0.1 amp all the way up to 40, and everything in between by 0.1.
So, and that's usually what a very high-end charger, the difference is going to be. It's not just
everything.
Oh, it can do a bigger battery faster. you're also starting to get diagnostics and data that you can pull from the battery, and
it's not, honestly, it's not for the faint of heart either. If you're just getting into the hobby, I would stay away from this.
Well, even hardcore race guys here,
those
of us that have these chargers,
I have to think about how to use this thing every once in a while.
Like, I don't use any of that data. Either the pack runs and it feels good, or it doesn't, and I throw it out.
You can definitely stop at this level and be very competitive.
Yeah.
This is getting into the point where I'm enjoying the hobby, and I just want to,
I just need to know.
I need to take it to the next level, and I need to do, because this thing's got so many features. It's getting to the point where it's got so many features that I don't even know everything that it does.
You can plug that into a PC, like a laptop, whatever, and you can download. It
comes with software.
The charge cycle behaviors of the battery and how it takes a charge and all this crazy stuff that for 99.9% of us, it's completely overkill.
So when you are buying a charger, just know, don't walk. I get guys that come in, I want the best one, the most expensive one. I'm like,
careful.
I'm like, I know where you're coming from. You want to buy a good one, but you don't want the most expensive, because now you have to buy this for $300, and then you have to buy a $100 power supply for it, and you got to wire it and buy chargers. You're gonna have $400 or $500 in your charger, and you don't know how to use it at all.
Right, and just so for those that the term power supply is not meaningful, all that means is it's an additional brick that you plug into the wall, and then it provides power to the back of the charger. So you basically have your own
Does nothing but convert power.
Yeah, it just converts the AC to the DC, but it's just part of the game.
It's like what's in your computer. It's just, they're all built in.
Yeah.
These have power supplies kind of built into them too. They're just smaller units.
Right.
Because they all charge DC technically. You can only cram so much. You can only cram so big of a power supply inside, a charger like this. That's why the amp rate is lower, because in order to keep it compact, you can only charge so much. I mean, the power supply to run this is actually like the size of the charger, basically. Effectively double the size of the charger to run it.
Right, which is why this charger, which can charge at a faster rate than this guy, is smaller. Is because all that stuff is out of the box. It's the separate.
Yeah, they even got iChargers that are about this big now, and it'll do 30 amps.
Yeah, those are nice. Those are nice chargers.
Those are the X8s, the X6s, and they're awesome chargers. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not knocking the iCharger. It's what 90% of us use for racing in here.
Yeah.
But if you're not a real tech savvy guy, there's really not a need to do it, because you can run a charger like this, and it'll charge your battery in enough time to get it out there in racing, even on a light night of racing.
Well, so that's the other thing is, even if you're running two classes, if you have a charger that can do, say, 10 amps, and it'll do two batteries at once, there's no way you're going to run out of batteries by the end of the night.
Yeah, and and with the capacity of these batteries, even after a 5-minute race, your battery is not dead. You're charging it maybe half of the battery you've used. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say you've probably used like 2,500 milliamp hours.
You don't need to sweat it too bad. And for a bashing standpoint, I know you want to get back out there, I would just buy multiple batteries for bashing and just have a dual charger, and you can go for quite a while. You can, if you buy a charger like this with decent batteries, you can probably keep your car going longer than the car wants to run for.
Getting back to the temperature thing.
Yeah. You can only run the car so much, realistically.
Yep.
If
you want to run continuously from dawn to dusk, get into nitro.
Yeah. So finding the balance is kind of nice between, I want to get it done fast, but I don't need something that's going to be confusing me, and I'm going to have to call 10 people to figure out how to use it.
Right.
And then, finding what works for you. And I know easier said than done, don't get me wrong. There's some experience involved with that. But circles back, most hobby shops probably be able to tell you, I think, this is one I sell a lot to people, because this one will, basically, if you buy this one, it's $150. And they have different variants that kind of look like it, give or take. For $150, it'll basically charge whatever battery you buy for whatever car, and it'll do 2 at a time. So you wouldn't really need to buy any other charger, more or less, if you get something like that.
Right.
Now, the lesser chargers might do the job, but this one will do the same job, and then some. Right. So you spend the $150, get some nice charge leads, you got a couple $100 into your charger setup, and you can kind of do whatever you want.
And I'm surprised it's that reasonably priced, because I think I paid $250 or $300 for my Orion dual charger, and that'll only do 10 amps.
And that was a good charger, but again, as technology goes, gets cheaper and
gets cheaper and
more
better.
Expensive. It depends on what you're buying, I guess. But
Yeah.
So the $100 to $200 range for the charger, I think, is a good spot for most. Get a lot of things done.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked about a few of the setups here, so you got the charger. Since it's not a brand charger like your Traxxas or your Spectrum, it doesn't know that you have this battery. Okay. So you have to set the charger up to charge this battery, because they're both. This is a New Wave. This is an Ultra Power, and your car is a Traxxas. So nothing's matching here. Nothing knows what it is. You got the lithium battery. This is a 3-cell 5000. We'll use this for the example. You now have to tell the charger that you're hooking a 3-cell 5000 milliamp battery to it, and then you have to appropriately set the amp rate, which is the charge rate. So most of these chargers will kind of walk you through it, and most of them come with a pretty decent manual. So look at the manual. They come with one.
Instructions?
Yes, they come with instructions, believe it or not.
What kind of world do we live in?
You don't have to call me 10 minutes after you get home. You can probably read it. But whatever, I understand. Some of us are not quite the tech savvy type. So rule of thumb for batteries, the voltage is the voltage. If you don't set it correctly, the charger is going to most likely yell at you anyway.
Right, because at this point you will have plugged in the main lead,
Right.
and so
Go for it.
my opinion, disagree if you like, there's no reason to not balance every time you charge your pack. I balance charge almost all the time because that's when the charger is looking for those cells. It's looking to make sure that the cell count matches because you have your balance charger, your balance plug hooked up. And to me, I like knowing that my packs always are being brought up exactly identical.
Yeah, no, you should always. I mean, most chargers are going to yell at you and beep at you to plug in the balance lead, which I do get a lot of calls about. You have to plug in the main lead and the balance lead. Like this charger here, it's got ports in the front. There's actually a board that comes off. Only, the plug will only fit in the 3-cell spot. Usually things are labeled. It'll beep at you if it's plugged in the wrong polarity. It'll beep at you if the balance lead's not plugged in. So they kind of have made it a little bit hard to do things incorrectly.
Well, and for most of them, when you try to start charging a pack, it almost forces you to answer those questions. It'll say, do you want to do a lithium balance charge? Yes. And then how many cells? And then plus or minus. And then the capacity and then the current. It's
going to walk you through it. You do a lithium polymer. You're going to do 3-cell, 11.1 volts. I know the Ultra Power one does 3-cell and it says the voltage. It says both. And probably the biggest question I get is how fast should I charge it?
Yep.
So depending on the brand and the type of battery, some will tell you how fast they can be charged. Sometimes you're gambling a little and trying to get it done faster. The easiest rule of thumb, the safest side of things, is to run a 1C charge rate. And I know we're throwing the C word, the C out there again.
You can't keep using the C word.
Yeah.
This is a family-friendly broadcast.
So, I don't know, you want to go for it?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So we talked about it in the beginning. The C rating, it's a way for the manufacturer to tell you how fast you can pull energy out of the battery, right? So if it's a 130 C pack, it can deliver a ton of energy. That number it's the same. It means the same thing when you're talking about charging the battery. Only the difference is you don't, just because it's a 130 C pack and it can give you 100 amps to the ESC, you don't want to try to charge it at 100 amps. You don't want to try charging it at the highest amperage you can. Usually the manufacturer, like Tyler said, will tell you charge it at 1C or 2C. Here's the easiest way to figure that out.
It does say it on the back.
Does it?
Our brand here, yes.
So what's that one say?
All right, the charge current cannot exceed 2C.
2C.
So 2C is the max that they're recommending, and it also gives you a temperature readout on here. Don't run it don't run it over 160 degrees.
Yikes.
Don't overcharge, don't reverse it.
Yeah, it gives you all the things that we've
does
talked
say it
about
on the back.
So I'm not sure if if the cell count plays into the C rating when you make that calculation.
No, it's mostly the milliamp.
Okay.
In my experience.
So for this 2-cell pack, it's a 5200. So the easiest way to look at it Remember, I made the conversion earlier from milliamps to amps. So this 5200 is really 5.2 amps. That's 1C, right?
That's it.
So that means that this pack, if they told you charge at 1C, that means you can charge it at 5.2 amps
Without a problem.
without a problem. They'll tell you 2C, then you just do the math. 5.2 is 1 times 2 is 10.4. Now you can charge it a little over 10 amps.
Which is effectively double the time. To double the charge rate, so it'll be half the time.
It'll be half the time, right?
Double the rate, half the time.
Generally speaking, unless you're really in a hurry, or you're trying to do, so there are little things people will do to try to eke additional power out of a pack. They'll try deep cycling the batteries, they'll charge them and discharge them, charge them and discharge them to put heat into them, to warm them up. In the end, if you're exceeding that 1 or 2C recommendation, you are taking life off the battery. Every time you use the pack, you're taking life off of it. These have a finite life. But when you're whacking them at a really high charge rate, I'd say north of 10, 15 amps, you'll see people hit them at 20, 25, 30 amps, whatever the charger will do. You may get away with it, assuming you're storing them in a bag while you charge them and they're attended and you're doing all the right things. But you are taking life off the pack. The pack will degrade faster than if you charged it gently over the course of its life.
So basically, when I tell people about charge rate is most modern chargers will do 10 amps or so, which is generally safe for most 5,000 milliamp packs. Now, if you don't want to take your 350 milliamp battery out of your mini crawler and whack it at 10 amps.
Right. This all gets back to
the size
doing the math
battery.
Based on the size of the pack. Exactly.
When in doubt, charge it slower. All right. So a slow charge, you'll get a more complete full charge, more milliamp, and it'll be a little more balanced. It'll be easier on the battery.
So that bears repeating. The faster you charge the pack, the less you actually are getting in it.
Right.
It is a less efficient charge. The other thing, I know you don't want to go into the weeds, but I've seen high voltage packs where instead of 7.4 volts nominal, they're 7.6. If you don't charge them to that high voltage number, which requires setting your charger up to do so, yada yada, if you don't charge them to that voltage, you're not getting the advertised milliamps out of the battery.
Correct.
That dawned on me this year for the first time.
So now that you said that, this is actually the New Wave 5200. So actually, I make the labels for these batteries. These were shipped to us as 7.6 volt 6300 milliamp batteries.
Okay, so
So what we did,
that's good of you.
because I don't believe in the high voltage marketing, we took the battery and we cycled it like 5 times. Completely dead to full, and then we got the average milliamp, and 5200 was the average milliamp that we got at 7.4 volts. Because the high voltage to me is kind of a gimmick, because at 6300 at 7.6 volts, which they're not lying, that's what it was. But the problem is we use these batteries for racing.
And you're regulated to
8.4 volts, which
Right.
is 7.4 nominal voltage. So we can't overcharge these batteries.
which means that capacity value is
Right.
almost completely irrelevant.
It's not really relevant, so we market them as 7.4 because we're going to be using them for racing. So 5200 is the true milliamp that you're going to get at that voltage.
Right. So if you're out there looking at packs and you see, a 4,000 milliamp hour shorty low profile pack, but it's 7.6 volts, not 7.4.
You're going to be in the 3400 range, more or less.
Right. You're buying a smaller pack, which is going to fade more over the course of the run, and blah,
there's
blah,
a little
blah.
bit of marketing involved there, so you got to, be a little vigilant about that.
Yep.
For the New Wave ones, we rate them all for 7.4 because 7.6 is really only used for mod racing, in which case the battery becomes less of a factor anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter at that point because you're just
battery.
the safety's off. You run whatever you want for a battery.
Actually,
motor.
it's been argued the lower C rating in mod has been better.
Because it mellows the car.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so charging the battery slower, you usually get a little more. You get a true charge, a little bit. Doesn't hurt the cells as much. Balances out better.
Yep.
If you whack the battery really hard, you usually get really high voltage in the beginning, but then it'll fall off a little faster.
Yep.
But if you're charging the battery within the rating the manufacturer said, like the 2C at 10 amps for the 5000,
Yep.
you're doing just fine. And then going back to the balancing thing, always balance your batteries. I know some of these chargers, like this one for example, has balance, charge, and fast charge. The difference there, the balance is going to take the most amount of time to try to get the cells to be as equal as possible.
Yep.
Charge splits the difference there a little bit and will take a little bit less time. It's not going to get them quite exactly matched.
But it's going to try.
It'll try. And
Yeah.
it's monitoring them, make sure no funny business is going on.
Fast charge is like
Fast charge.
full party mode.
Fast charge is still monitoring the cells, but doesn't care as much. It's just trying to get there as fast.
Yeah.
So some chargers will have different things. Balance is always being the safest, but sometimes I tell people, hey, my battery's been sitting here balancing for an hour and a half, and it's 0.01 volts off. All right, you probably
Take it off and run it.
You can run your battery. I mean, there's a little bit of leeway there. You don't want to be, if one's half a volt off from the other, then
Yeah.
you gotta think about it a little.
Well, and that's the other thing when we're talking about balance, we're talking about battery care and battery life. If it's a programmable factor or feature of your ESC, I'm a big fan of setting the LiPo cutoff a little on the high side. You know,
it never hurts.
I don't need that extra 500 milliamps worth of maybe 60 seconds of runtime. I'd rather not pull the battery down as far.
Yeah, LiPo cutoff is definitely something that you can play with. Most I'm gonna call them ready to run cars is pretty much set, kind of where you want to leave it. So
Yeah.
you know, you're running your Traxxas, your Arma, Axial, whatever. Just kind of leave those the same. But if you're gonna venture off and you want to play with aftermarket electronics,
Yep.
depending on what you're doing with said electronics, for drag racing we turn the cutoff all the way off. We don't run any cutoff because we're running the car for 2 seconds. And the voltage dump sometimes will kick the battery into cutoff.
Because it's pulling
Because
so
it's so
hard.
many amps. So that's a case where we turn the voltage cutoff off. For 8th scale, I usually leave it a little bit on the high side, like Tyler said, because I'm running a pretty large battery in my Truggy. I know I'm not going to kill it, so I usually leave that a little high.
Yeah.
Me, for 2-wheel drive buggy, I turned it off.
Really?
Reason being is I don't drive my car for more than 6 minutes. So I know I'm not going to kill that battery. What?
Nothing.
I've driven it for more than 6 minutes. But I can turn it on and off. I'm saying when I'm racing it.
You pay attention.
I leave it on when I'm letting other people use it.
Right.
But I turn that off just because I don't want that to be a factor at all. I just want
Yeah, fair.
if I'm on that last lap and I'm
Well, and I think about some of the people I see that come in here, that it's their first off-road buggy or whatever,
leaving it on is the way to go if you
And-
don't know what's going on.
and they buy the 6,000 milliamp pack. They want to go out there and just run lap after lap after lap after lap. So they set it on the low side, and it's like, well, usually after 10 or 15 minutes, it's time to give the car a rest. So you don't need to squeeze
And that goes back to what we've
squeeze
been
it
saying
dead.
the whole time. You know, getting the right battery for the right car for the right situation is 90% of the battle.
Yeah.
You got a good setup with the right battery, let the car cool down in between, change batteries, then you're good to go. I mean, these things are not designed to run forever.
No.
You got the tens of thousands of RPMs that you're pushing through these motors generates a lot of heat.
Yep.
Coupled with gearing it appropriately and the size of the tires, the terrain you're running it on. There's all factors that lead to the battery and the heat and all that stuff. Everything has to be accounted for. You're going to continually have problems.
Yep. So while we're really briefly talking about heat, LiPo bags, battery warmers.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing too. So lithium batteries technically will discharge more power at a warmer temperature. I don't know what the ideal, I don't warm my battery, so I don't know what the ideal temperature is. You've been playing with it.
I never did that up until this season. Shout out to Mike Coombs, has been nice enough for the last few weeks to put my batteries in the oven. And they're only coming out at, say, I think like 100 degrees, maybe 110. Like not hot by any means, but when you're in a building that's
it gets a little chilly in here in a little winter.
55, 60 degrees on a warm day, I always kind of like, other guys had told me about it, and I'm like, that can't make that big of a difference, like especially in a stock car, but it does.
Yeah.
So to me, like for the $40 I spent on mine, and it's actually the one I got, I haven't shown it to you yet, but it's about this big. It'll hold 2 of these shorty packs. It has a little button with 3 different heat settings. It runs off a cell phone charger, and it's just enough that the car has noticeably more punch than if it was a cold pack. If you want to see like a really extreme example, watch somebody with a cold battery with a mod car. It is night and day difference.
No kidding.
Yes. I was watching Steve Fume run one day, and he was, he brought everything in from the car. It was cold outside. Everything had been in the car that morning. He unloaded everything and he went out to do a run, and his car with like a 6-turn mod motor looked like a 13.5. It didn't want to RPM. It didn't want to pull. Like it was and I mean, this was like a cold battery, but it made a big difference.
Yeah, so I mean, it makes sense.
Is it going to make you a hero in 17.5 if you warm your batteries up? No. You need to have all the other stuff in line with it, but it's real.
And you're talking the extreme one end to the other. I mean, it's January here for anybody that's not local watching us. We're talking going from 20, 30 degrees to 100 degrees in the battery.
Right. So I would say, well, even like with my packs that are in my heated house and my heated truck, and then I get here, I felt a difference.
Okay.
It was less aggressive, But like if you're running in Florida, probably doesn't matter. But here, where we get super cold winters, and your stuff is in a car that may not be fully heated up and blah blah blah, like your real car.
Yeah.
It does make a difference.
But generally speaking, a warmer battery and a cold motor is the best.
Oh, that's the ticket.
The best combo,
that's
really.
That's a happy magnet and a happy battery.
Yeah.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. I mean, if you're just bashing and getting into it, disregard the warming battery part. That's probably too much.
That goes in like this category.
That's getting into the racing and trying to be, the most competitive. But yeah, keeping the battery. But that goes to show the actual keeping the battery in a good condition, where the battery is running better, warmer. Don't keep it freezing out in your trunk and then throw it in your car, because you might not get the results you like.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going out to like bash at the park on a cool day, put your batteries in the passenger seat next to you. Like give them half a chance to not turn into.
And batteries will get warm too while you're driving the car, so if you're pulling a lot of amps.
Yes, they will.
So keep that in mind. You don't want to overheat your batteries. I see this the most in boats. Batteries get super hot in boats.
Because it's high load and they're in an enclosed environment?
Yeah, there's zero airflow inside of a boat.
Yeah.
And boats draw an incredible amount of amps. We're talking, we had, I think 7,000 or 8,000 milliamp batteries in our boats, and we're killing them in 8 minutes.
Jeez.
And I mean killing them like they're low voltage cutoff. Because boats draw a super amount of amps trying to cut through water.
They're always under load.
And the same with helicopters. Anything you need to hold a high RPM for a decent amount of time is gonna kill a battery. Obviously, naturally. Wow. But yeah, not to get off on a tangent about boats there, but if you are running a boat and you're like, hey, my batteries are dying 5-8 minutes, yeah, it's kind of just the way it is, honestly. Wow. If you're running a high power boat, there's really no answer. I get that phone call a lot. Man, I only ran my boat for 8 minutes. Oh, that's pretty good.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I only get 5 out of mine. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, just get more batteries, honestly. That's what it comes down to, really. But the boat's usually getting pretty hot by then, too, even though they're liquid cooled. Well, boat tangent. Maybe I'll have a boat podcast. Once it gets a little warmer out. It's about 2 degrees out.
Yeah. There's a bunch of subjects that...
Oh, yeah, we got a bunch of
they're going to... you may not see me in the passenger seat. It may be a relevant expert, but Tyler's got a lot of subjects lined up.
Stay tuned. Like, subscribe. Yeah.
Hit that notification bell.
Ding. But yeah, batteries, chargers, it can be a little bit of a scary initial investment, I guess. Some way to put that. But yeah, if you're going with a mid-range charger in the $100, $200 range, you usually can't go wrong. Make sure you get the appropriate battery with the appropriate connector for your vehicle. You always say it doesn't hurt to go +1 on that stuff, and by that I mean it's rated for this. You can usually get the bigger one and get away with it.
One step above what
You know what I mean?
think you need.
You're like, they recommend 50C battery for my car. You get a 75 or 100. You're not hurting anybody, and you probably get a little bit, a little better of a time out of it.
Yeah.
But with that being said, you don't need to go +10 and put a 300C battery in your two-wheel drive stock Slash.
Well, and like with things like battery chargers, they're not really a wear item. Batteries will wear out.
You
Your
can get years
chargers.
out of these things.
I mean, that Orion I mentioned. I've had that charger now for knock on wood for like 4 or 5 seasons, and it's been great to me.
It's an item that you can buy for $200 and use it for quite a few years.
Right.
And
You'll
it's
get
not
your money's
limited-
worth.
It's not limited to that car that you just bought. It'd be, you can use this charger for that one, and I'll pick up a new one. I'm going to use this one.
Yeah.
And that same goes for the Spectrum and the Traxxas, as long as you stay in their ecosystem, really.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much batteries and chargers in a nutshell. If you got anything more to add, I think I've said just about everything I know.
Yeah, I think we've adequately killed this horse.
Yeah. So obviously, if you guys got any more questions, comment below, message me, let me know what's up. And then with that being said, we are planning to do more live events.
Yeah.
Nothing scheduled at the moment, but we're shooting for a once a month kind of deal. Just straight up question and answer. It seemed to work really well.
Yeah, that first one was hysterical.
The
That was
last
so
time.
much fun.
So so if you watched this far into this episode, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys. More cool content to come. I think that's it for today, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you in the next show.
Later.